Councilor Mercia, please lead us in the council prayer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dear God, today as this session opens, we pray that your presence will be before us and everyone who serves in the decision-making process of our city. We pray for direction which will lead our city to be strong and unified. May we continue the legacy of our founders. May we be granted this day the wisdom to make decisions which will be for the good of our city. We also pray for your special blessing on all those who are working to transform our city and make it a better place to live and work. Amen.
Amen. Please honor our nation's flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I recognize Councilor Mercia. Roll call, please.
Councilor Mercia.
Here.
Mayor Murphy.
Here.
Councilor Nunn.
Here.
Councilor Broderick.
Here.
Councilor Elliott.
Here.
Councilor Kennedy.
Here.
Councilor Laurie.
Here.
Councilor Martin.
Here.
Councilor Madonza.
Here.
9 present.
Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to offer a moment of silence in darkened chamber for Richard C.J. Brusso. He was the beloved husband of Catherine Brusso. Catherine served this city well for 38 years as the school health coordinator for the city of Lowell nurses. Her husband, Richard Brusso, was a veteran of the United States Air Force, having served from 1956 to 1961. He graduated from the University of Lowell with a Bachelor of Science degree in financial management. Surviving him besides his wife, Catherine, is a daughter, Dr. Margaret Meg Brusso of Dracut. His dog, Patty, I had to include that, as well as many relatives and friends. We offer our sympathy to his family and many friends. He will be truly missed. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you please rise in a moment of silence in darkened chambers? May they rest in peace. Under the city clerk's agenda, we have minutes of February 7th, Transportation Subcommittee, also for February 7th for acceptance. Motion by Councilor Broderick, seconded by Councilor Noon. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Under city manager's portion of the agenda, we have communications from city manager, responses to city council motions and requests. Any discussion? Councilor Kennedy.
We received a memorandum in the packet on Friday regarding the municipal liens, but which came from the city solicitor. But I was kind of expecting, I thought from your comments last week that there was going to be something a little more about how we were going to proceed going forward. Mm-hmm. And some of while the memorandum was very informative and well written, a large part of it was retro rather than forward looking.
Right. We plan on updating this as we move forward. The purpose of and I did indicate that there would be a report coming on what we've been doing with tax title and what we were, and as part of that, what the next steps would be. And I think if you look at the report that the solicitor provided to me, which I passed on to the council, it does show the progress that's been made certainly over the last couple of years as we've reorganized that and restructured that, the tax title function, and taken certain steps. And we also list out, though, the work that we've been doing over the last year as we've been working towards the idea or the concept that a number of communities have adopted, like the city of Worcester, where the where they've been auctioning off the tax title. There are a couple of different ways you can do that. But we have, that's what the intent of this was, to outline what we've seen with what Worcester's done and some of the other communities, our own law department staff attending tax title options, to draw upon the experiences of these other communities and working with a number of consultants on that effort. And then the work that's being done by DPD to identify the properties on our tax title list that we want to hold back for our own development purposes, the work that the assessors are doing with regards to the properties that are receiving exemptions, the seniors and veterans and disabled that are receiving exemptions that are in the tax title at this time, that we want to again hold back on. The work that the environmental officer has done on contaminated properties to ensure that we are perhaps hold on to those and then have access to brownfields money that we can then clean up those properties again, so that we can make sure that those are appropriately developed. And then some other properties that inspectional services have identified that have a number of code violations, so that we can sell those tax titles off in a different format, so that we can ensure that those properties are properly maintained. But all in all, this is all coming together, as I indicate, or as the solicitor indicated in her report, for this auction to be taking place in early to mid-April. So we are moving forward with that. There has been quite a bit of work that has been done, which we try to identify here, and as we get further along the process, we'll be updating the council on that.
Let me just, I'd just like to say that the purpose of the motion last week was not to imply that the administration hasn't been doing enough as far as municipal liens. It was just that when I requested the list and realized that there was 10.5 million that was available, and became aware that there were other communities that were doing this both by auction and by RFP, then it seemed to me like it was a good idea for us to do that. And I think that I don't really like the Worcester model that much for this reason. They seem to do it in a piecemeal approach, so that you have many different entities bidding on it, rather than bidding on the liens rather than just one. And you have people bidding on the liens that are a little bit easier to collect than, and there's not so much activity on the liens that are more difficult to collect. So I guess what I would like to see the administration do is put together a bundle, or maybe 3 or 4 bundles, but those bundles should include, the cream and the cake, not just the cream, so that if it's done by auction or RFP, you should have to bid on those bundles, I kind of like the RFP process better than the auction, just because I think it gives the city more control over how the winning bidder would go about collecting the money. But either way is okay with me. It's just that I think that we should try to remove as much as we can from those. We should collect as much as we can of the 10.5. And, when you take out the properties that have environmental problems that might be important to us in some other way, or the little pockets, there's still a good chunk there, and a good chunk of money that could result and should result in a large influx of cash, which every municipality is looking for, including this one. And so but that's all I'm trying to do here, is just look forward and say, well, what can we do to get some more money? It was not meant at all to be meant to imply that there was anything the matter with how the administration's been proceeding before I got here.
Mr. Manager?
Councilor, please believe me, I didn't take it as that. I took it as given the fact that it's exactly what we're talking about doing with the auction, I took it as a vote of endorsement to what we're trying to do, and I appreciate that. And I agree with you too that my goal here, in fact, I was discussing this with the solicitor just actually earlier today, as I look back, was that whole notion of bundling the good and the bad. Together or all into one, so that we get everything cleared off as much as we can. Absolutely. I don't want to give people the choice to only take the easy ones and then leave us with still the tough ones. If anything, I want the easy ones, and we'll give them the tough ones.
Okay, good. So I think if you look at the way Methuen's doing it, or Haverhill, that their model, the way they're doing it might be a little bit better for us than the way Worcester's been doing it. I realize Worcester's been doing it longer, but doesn't mean they've been doing it better.
No, and I think that, and again, and not to belabor the point, but I think that what I like about Worcester is the fact that they have made this a regular occurrence. That this is a relatively new concept. Only in the past 2 or 3 years, the communities have really been doing this. And although it's been kicked around for a little bit longer, but it's really picked up steam. But the idea that we do it, we clear it off, and then we just make it a regular occurrence so that we're not in this business.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Laurie?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I put in a request a couple of weeks ago for synchronizing lights, and we got the report this week. And I just want to say, really, it was an extensive report, and they really did a great job. And it's underway now in the areas as we redo the Hamilton Canal District, the downtown area, Father Morissette. These areas are being done. I think the area out in the Highlands by Lowe's, in that area. So I just want to say, I appreciate the work that was done, and the possibility that this city, with the new bridges, the lights will be synchronized, and I think it's well on its way, and I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Martin and Councilor Mendonça. Councilor Mendonça.
Back to the tax title document, just a quick few questions. I've heard the backlog is about 10 million. Is that roughly correct?
That's roughly correct. I think it's, actually tried to pull some of these numbers together. It's 7.5 tax title, and then the real estate receivables to combined is about 7.5. But as Councilor Kennedy pointed out, the actual total is 10 plus million. And that includes the interest that's due to us.
That's including the interest, all right. And in a typical year, about how many gets added to the backlog? How much? I know that it's going to depend on the economy at the time, but just generally in the last few years.
Yeah, it really varies. We have about a little over 98% collection rate of our real estate taxes during the fiscal year in which they're levied. So at the end of the year, there are roughly $2 million of unpaid taxes. It's easier for me to describe the process. At the close of the year, we typically send out letters saying those properties are going into tax title, and that generates quite a bit of payment. So during the course of a typical year, we'll probably have somewhere in the range of $1.5 million of real estate taxes actually get unpaid, and then that'll be offset by $1.5 million of old things being paid. So there's the last 3 years, there's not been a whole lot of change year to year over the total receivable, which is good. That if that total doesn't increase, we're doing better because the levy is going up. So the receivable as a percentage of the total levy is going down.
Okay. So we're doing a little better than treading water in that we're collecting over $2 million a year.
Well, we did last year.
Yeah.
We're not going to repeat that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eventually, there's just not that much of the backlog to collect. And in order to go with the tax title, how long would it have to be in arrears? Obviously, not the very first year.
Yeah, the very first year. Typically what happens is the last tax bill is due May 1st. Demands go out 2 to 3 weeks after that. In June, we tally up all the tax titles receivables. In good years, we've actually taken the amounts that are owed for property, current taxes that are owed for taxes that are already, properties already in tax title, and actually move them over to tax title in June, but more typically that happens in early summer. The new liens, once that process moves forward, typically 6 to 8 months. It goes from delinquent to what they call an initial brand-new tax title, so it's not that long.
Yeah, until it goes into tax title.
Right.
And then the follow-on to that is, if we have to take it through the courts,
Right.
do you have
That-
any
that can
experience
be-
how long that would take?
That can be quite lengthy. The typical tax title case, once we petition the court, we usually take collection methods before that, so, but once we petition the court, it may take up to a year, 6 months to a year, to get a judgment. That's if everything goes properly. If there's an estate issue, probate issue, if there's a bankruptcy, it can take years. Some of the worst cases have been 10, 15 years.
So if we follow this auction process, we're actually giving our tax title rights to this third party. Correct. In which case they'll either collect what's owed, or they'll take it through the court foreclosure process.
Correct.
And become owners of the property. Would
That's
that be
correct.
correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Well, if the mayor has anything else to add, the manager has anything else to add.
Well, I just wanted to point out, particularly, I think all the councilors know this, but to the viewing audience out there, that, we like to collect our money, the money that's due, because it's due to the citizens as a whole, to the city. People who don't pay have very high interest rates on that, and we always collect that money. So we get 14% on late bills and 16% once it goes into tax title. So it's a very high interest rate. There's a extensive penalty that goes with that. And then if it actually goes to tax title, or they work to redeem that, there are fees associated with that as well that are quite high.
Okay, thank you for the information, I really appreciate it.
Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Many times in our packets, we get information that the viewing public doesn't have an opportunity to see. And so this is a great opportunity at this particular portion of the agenda to say the things that I think are important for people to realize. And I know that we're always looking for ways to save money, and many ideas float around and actually looked at. And one in particular is to lower the utility costs. And having said that, there was an idea in the city to purchase the streetlights and would have to take over the maintenance, but that has been completed. The purchase has been completed of over 5,000 streetlights from National Grid. That put us in another category, a lower category, a lower S5 customer-owned equipment rate. So that brought us to tell the public that in 2008, our streetlight energy account was budgeted at $870,000, and this year it's $350,000. That's over $500,000 savings. That is remarkable. And also, I want people to realize that, and I know it's online, that they can click on to report a street light outage banner and put in that information that they'll need, because I have been forwarding to Henry Marchand, your assistant city manager, my list of all the calls that I've received, and so we've been working together on this. My understanding that this company comes in on Thursdays and goes over the list of the people that call in to City Hall, so it's online for people to, look at under the lowellmass.gov, and they can report their light that's out. And so I really think this is a good program, and I thought I'd like to share that with the public. Thank you.
Mr. Manager.
Well, Councilor, thank you for noting that. And it has been we were very, when we brought forward the idea, we projected substantial savings to the city, but the savings have become even greater over time, more than we had anticipated. So we tried to be conservative in our projections and extensive savings. And I think in the end, people are going to find that, particularly with their reporting, being able to report those streetlights out to us, and the company coming in every Thursday, we're going to get a quicker response as well. Because if people know, when National Grid used to maintain these for us, it could take weeks, sometimes longer, to get a streetlight fixed. And we think that this new contract will allow us to be more responsive in getting those lights fixed. And it also allows us, one idea that I know the mayor had talked about, I believe at the end of the last term, was LED streetlights. That again will save us more money in the long run. And if we had stayed with the old system, that would have been very difficult, if not impossible, to do. But now under this, we're going to be able to. We think we're going to be able to move on that a good chunk of those streetlights in the very near future.
Thank you.
Councilor Martin?
Thank you. I passed before because I didn't want to keep coming back to something we already talked about, but I did have an issue on the tax title. So at the end, Mr. Manager, you talked about the interest, 14%, the city collects that, but now if we sell those liens to a third party, we wouldn't get that interest. We get the interest up to the date of sale, but presumably after that, that would go to the third party collector.
That's
right?
correct.
Right, okay.
Any further discussion on the motions? Councilor Elliott and then Councilor
Thank
Mendoza.
you. I just want to go back to the streetlights. Mr. Manager or Mr. Moses, how much, I know the loan order was for $400,000 that we voted for. How much was the cost of the purchase? Was it close to that, or for the 5,000?
No, the purchase was, I believe, 38,000.
38?
Yeah, we paid an additional close to 50,000 for the survey of the system, the consultant to work with National Grid, and as a prerequisite, we had to get GPS coordinates for all the streetlights. So we paid those costs. We did not borrow the full 400,000. So we have money available to go toward LED lights from the loan order if we choose to do that. That will increase our return by lowering the costs going forward.
So do we own the streetlights downtown as well?
We own those
Originally?
right.
Okay. So the city is still going to maintain those lights?
The Victorians will still be maintained by the city. It's the larger overheads that will be maintained by Coviello.
And how come we're going to a contract? I mean, I was assuming when we voted for this that the city was going to, we had, I don't know, X amount of electricians to do the work, and that was going to be additional savings. Do we?
Actually, when you work out the numbers, it's less expensive to have the contractor maintain those, and we felt it was we could still maintain the Victorians with our current staff, but with the thousands of lights that we have in the city, and the imperative to get those fixed on a very quick basis, that it makes more sense. And again, this is where the the savings that we see comes from, and it mirrors exactly what's taking place in every other community that's done this type of project.
So does the 60,000, is that included in the delta or the variance between the savings since '08, or is that in addition to? I'm just trying to get a bottom line figure on what it's going to cost, because as you indicated, the savings, it's hard, and I have some questions about the next paragraph. It's hard to determine what's going to take, the savings in the FY 2003 budget. So is that 60,000 or 58,000? Excuse me. Is that part of the 350 savings, or on top of?
Yes, the 58 is part of
Included.
the 350. Now, moving forward in next year, that budget may need to go up. We received quite a bit of credit this year that applied in fiscal year 2012. I don't think it'll be as low as 350 every year, but it's going to be well below 870.
And what was that credit for? I did see that in,
The credit was, we've been negotiating for quite some time with National Grid, and they agreed to retroactively give us credit for the difference between the S1 and the S5 rate going back to October, I believe, of 2010. So we have a large credit coming.
that was my next question. I don't know the difference between S1 and S5. And you say S5 is customer-owned equipment rate,
Right.
and reversing our SO1 bills, we'll see a few months of bills at a lower S5 rate. Could you explain that for me?
Actually, that's a very important point. One of the reasons it's a little premature to determine what the 2013 budget will be going forward is we haven't seen any bills yet at the S5 rate. So we're not really sure how much that monthly bill will be.
What is that rate? I don't, in layman's terms, just a rate that
It's
municipalities
a lower rate.
get?
The National Grid has several different types of rates. It's not as simple as being a consumer where you pay the regular retail rate. Businesses have the opportunity of taking peak, off-peak rates, wholesale rates. There are several different types. All I know is the S5 rate is lower than the S1 rate.
If
As long as it's not higher,
Yeah,
we'll go with that.
If I may, Counselor, I know a little bit more about this than Mr. Moza, I guess. But I actually did something similar to this some 18 years ago. Before the deregulation, they had some different rates too, and essentially, and then they've modified them since the deregulation. But what the S1 rate does is it charges you for the electricity, but also a portion of the cost. There's an amortization of the cost of the actual fixture that's included within that, versus the S5, which just has the use of the electricity. So it's going to be substantially less.
And did we bid this out to Coviello? Is that the organization, or?
Yes.
Okay, they were the low bidder.
Correct.
Okay. Anybody from the city bid? I mean, I'm always looking to give local communities
I don't
an
believe
opportunity.
anyone.
And
The two big ones are Coviello and Republic, and then in some communities, the nearby municipals actually do it. The town of Concord, the town of Reading, I believe the town of Littleton has bid on other communities, but in our case, I don't believe we had any municipals bid on it.
Thank you.
Councilman Mendonça.
There was another communication in our packet, which I think may have come from the clerk, not the manager, regarding memberships in the boards and commissions. And, I mean, this may have been a result of a response to Councilor Kennedy's motion last week, but in looking at it, I realized that it had the same inaccuracies for my motion back in the end of November, early December, that I asked that it be updated. But there's several inaccuracies in there now that were still there then. So I'm hoping they'll be corrected soon, and we can get an updated list. I mean, in some cases, there are more names listed than there are seats. And I think if you just scrub out the expired or resigned entries, that'll remove a number of the extra entries that are in here now. License Commission's got 5 names. We know there are only 3 board members. So I think just deleting some of the excess out will clean it up. Earlier on, when I made the motion back at the end of last year, they said that this would be done by the end of February. Is that still on track, either the clerk or the manager?
Mr. Manager.
I know that Mr. Marchand and Ms. McIntosh in my office have been trying to get into this. It kind of goes to something that Councilor Kennedy brought up last week, the challenge that we've been facing. And, you know, it's one of those projects that gets pushed off occasionally because of the more pressing matters that we have going on. But we have the situation that you described, where we have more names there. They need to be scrubbed off, and we also need to get the right dates of the appointments, and that requires going back in history to find out where it fell apart, and it goes back, in some cases, 10, 12 years. So that work is underway. We're still shooting to get this done by the end of February. I agree with Councilor Kennedy's comments from last week that, we need to clean up this whole appointment process of getting these vacancies filled and making sure the right terms are there and that the terms are staggered and so on. So we're shooting for that.
All right, thank you.
It may take a bit longer than we'd like, but we're still, if nothing else, at least we want to get the right names on the lists.
There's just another question. I mean, it starts off with the Arena Civic Stadium Commission. I think we still have some subset of that for the Lasher Park, but again, it probably needs to be updated.
Right.
Was it going to be renamed, or?
I think that name is in statute, actually.
Oh, okay.
So,
But that still exists because
Yes,
of
it
the
does.
Lasher Park.
right.
All right, thank you.
Councilor Lowry and then Councilor Noon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to, I guess, either Mr. Moses or the city solicitor, we were talking about the tax title, the motion that Councilor Kennedy put through. Would there be any savings on court cost by, if we're selling the loans out, would we be saving with court cost at all, or going to court where it would be?
Well, we're actually selling off the receivable before we incur any court costs.
Right.
So there may be some avoidance down the road if we would have foreclosed. Our intent really is to resolve the receivable. Hopefully the sale doesn't result in an increase in foreclosures. That's not our intent.
Right, okay. I was just wondering if there would be more savings down the line on that. Thank you.
Councilor Noon.
Thank you, Mayor. On the membership list, Mr. Managers, along the line that Councilor Mendonca indicated that they need an updated, but also I may suggest that, in the future, that we send a letter of thank you to all those members that have been served, their term expired, and it would be nice to do that. Thank you.
I agree. We generally do that. Generally, I can usually count on Councilor Mercia to remind us to do it, but we do it. So, but I think that's an excellent point.
Any further discussion on the communications? Motion to accept by Councilor Broderick, seconded by Councilor Mendonca, to place on file. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Being after 7 o'clock, we'll move to the public hearings. We have in City Council an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances in the City of Lowell, Massachusetts, with respect to Chapter 9 entitled Boards, Commissions, and Committees, Section 9-15, Planning Board, and Section 9-17, Powers and Duties. Motion to waive the full reading by Councilor Broderick, seconded by Councilor Lowry. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Second reading by title, in City Council ordinance, an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, City of Lowell, Massachusetts, with respect to Chapter 9 entitled Boards, Commissions, and Committees, Section 9-15, Planning Board, and Section 9-17, Powers and Duties. Does the manager wish to explain the motion before we open it up?
Excuse me. I believe this was a motion that was made by a Councilor Broderick and then subsequently by Councilor Mendonca that allows us to establish planning board alternates or associate members who can fill in for when other planning board members are not available or if there may be a conflict. So it guarantees that the process moves forward expeditiously. Otherwise, you can have situations where people who are not going to be present for all of the hearings may not be able to participate. So this gives us some backups to fill in. It also serves, I think, an important function of allowing us to sort of bring people into the process. They can serve as associate members until there's a vacancy, and then assuming they meet the requirements of the position and are interested in the position, we can move them into the full positions.
Thank you. At this time, we'll open it up for a public hearing for those who wish to speak in favor of the ordinance, in favor. Seeing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. We'll open it up for those wishing to speak in opposition. In opposition? In opposition? Seeing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the body? Councilor Mendonça.
Move approval?
Move for approval by Councilor Mendonça, seconded by Councilor Laurie. Roll call, please.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Councilor Norton.
Yes.
Councilor Broderick.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Laurie.
Yes.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
Councilor Mendonça.
Yes.
9 yeas, so voted.
Next, we have in City Council ordinance, an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, City of Lowell, Massachusetts, with respect to Chapter 87 thereof, entitled Adult Establishments, by amending various sections. Motion to waive the full reading by Councilor Broderick, seconded by Councilor Laurie. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Second reading by title, in City Council, ordinance, an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, City of Lowell, Massachusetts, with respect to Chapter 87 thereof, entitled Adult Establishments, by amending various sections. At this time, we'll open it up for a public hearing for all those wishing to speak in favor. In favor. In favor. Seeing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. We'll open it up for those wishing to speak in opposition. In opposition. In opposition. Seeing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move approval.
Move for approval by Councilor Mendonça, seconded by Councilor Mercia. Roll call, please.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Councilor Nguyen.
Yes.
Councilor Broderick.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Laurie.
Yes.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
Councilor Mendonça.
Yes.
9 yeas, so voted.
Next, we have an ordinance, in City Council ordinance, an ordinance amending the zoning ordinance of the City of Lowell, Massachusetts, by amending various sections. Motion to waive the full reading by Councilor Mendonça, seconded by Councilor Broderick. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Second reading by title, in City Council ordinance, an ordinance amending the zoning ordinance of the City of Lowell, Massachusetts, by amending various sections. At this point, we'll open it up for a public hearing for those wishing to speak in favor of the ordinance. In favor? In favor, seeing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. We'll open it up for those wishing to speak in opposition. In opposition? In opposition, seeing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the council? Move for approval by Councilor Laurie, seconded by Councilor Martin. Roll call, please.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Councilor Nguyen.
Yes.
Councilor Broderick.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Laurie.
Yes.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
Councilor Mendonça.
Yes.
9 yeas, so voted.
Moving back to the city manager's portion of the agenda, we have in City Council order pursuant to Chapter 266 of the Code of Ordinances, City of Lowell, Massachusetts, concerning Section 266-6, entitled Temporary Experimental Regulations. Temporary traffic regulations are implemented for a period of 60 days. The City of Lowell desires to make temporary rules regulating traffic under actual conditions for a period of 60 days. In Chapter 266 of the Code of Ordinances, City of Lowell, Massachusetts, Section 266-6, entitled Temporary Experimental Regulations, authorizes the City Council to make temporary rules for a period not to exceed 60 days. Now be it ordered, adjudged, and decreed by the City Council of the City of Lowell as follows. Effective immediately for a period of 60 days, the following temporary traffic regulations shall be implemented. Subsection 266-47, stop sections is amended by adding the following: stop sign on Queen Street, the direction of travel north at the intersection of Branch Street. Second reading by title, in City Council order pursuant to Chapter 266 of the Code of Ordinances, City of Lowell, Massachusetts, concerning Section 266-6, entitled Temporary Experimental Regulations. Temporary traffic regulations are implemented for a period of 60 days.
Move approval.
Move approval by Councilor Kennedy, second by Councilor Laurie. Roll call, please.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Councilor Nguyen.
Yes.
Councilor Broderick.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Laurie.
Yes.
Councilor Martin. Councilor Madonza.
Yes.
9 yeas, so voted.
Next, we have in City Council vote authorizing the City Council to ratify and approve the execution by the City Manager of a memorandum of understanding between the City of Lowell and the Lowell Traffic Supervisors Association, the association, covering the period July 1st, 2010 through June 30th, 2012, in accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 150B, Section 7B, collective bargaining memorandum of understanding between the City of Lowell and the Lowell Traffic Supervisors Association, covering the period July 1st, 2010 through June 30th, 2012, had been reached acting through a city manager as a collective bargaining representative and the Lowell Traffic Supervisors Association, which agreement covers the items negotiated over the past few months and the funds necessary to cover the cost of these agreements through fiscal year 2012 were included in the budget for fiscal year 2012, and no new funds need be appropriated. And the city manager requests and recommends approval of the attached memorandum of understanding. Be it voted by the City Council of the City of Lowell as follows: that the Council of the City of Lowell ratifies and approves the execution, and the City Manager of the City of Lowell, of the collective bargaining memorandum of understanding between City of Lowell and the Lowell Traffic Supervisors Association covering the period July 1st, 2010 through June 30th, 2012. Second reading by title and City Council vote. Authorizing the City Council to ratify and approve the execution by the City Manager of a memorandum of understanding between the City of Lowell and the Lowell Traffic Supervisors Association covering the period July 1st, 2010 through June 30th, 2012.
Move approval.
Move for approval by Councilor Kennedy, seconded by Councilor Laurie. Mr. Manager.
Mr. Mayor, just very briefly, a couple of weeks ago, the council voted to authorize me to execute an agreement with the firefighters union, which mirrors this memorandum of understanding and the other two memorandums that are before you tonight that we've been successful in negotiating with our unions, with the firefighters, with the one before you right now, which is the traffic supervisors, also the superior officers union of the police department, and then the city engineers. In each case, they are a 2-year deal with a 0% increase in salary for both of those years, and then some language that we were looking for with regards to direct deposit, sick and vacation time, hours of duties, and the like. But I think it's, I just want to comment that these negotiations have taken place in a very positive manner, very amicable, and I want to thank the unions that have participated in this process, and we're still negotiating with several others, stepping up once again and accepting an agreement with no increase in compensation, and also providing us some language that will provide us with opportunities for savings in the future.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councilor Laurie and then Councilor Elliott.
I just want to congratulate the city manager and the unions for reaching the agreement, and I'd like to thank the employees. You know, you look at the contracts, no percentage, you know, and you're just that they've stepped forward so much today. You read and see in the news that, you know, public employees and the money, and these contracts are signed with absolutely zero increase, And I just want to congratulate the manager and the employees for reaching the agreements. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Elliott.
Yeah, I'm going to support this and appreciate the employees as well. Mr. Manager, just some of these language changes, I'm just looking under vacation time. They can take time off in quarter, half, or full days. Are they not allowed to do that right now?
No, they've not been allowed to do that.
They have to take full days or
I believe they can do
nothing?
half days right now.
Or half
This is-
days?
Right.
So this allows them to do
Quarter days.
Quarter days, okay. We're going to buy them ballistic vests, which,
The issue with the ballistic vest is an adoption of a policy that's consistent with what the Department of Justice is looking for us to do, that ensures that the vests are available for them to utilize in order for us to meet federal standards.
excellent. No, and I believe the chief has been pretty good with using the trust fund, hasn't he, to buy a lot, if not most of this equipment too? Okay, good. Just
And
not,
just to be clear, the issue there with the federal standard is that this now allows us to be reimbursed from the
very
federal
good.
government.
excellent. And I just had one other question, and this just doesn't relate to this one, but on sick time, buyback sick, I know that I've raised it in the past, and you're aware of it. It's kind of a large line item in our budget. Whether it was this or other agreements, are there any proposals? Are you bringing anything forward? I mean, I know you've said in the past, and in order to get something, you gotta give something, and we really don't have much to give. But as I look at the budget every year, I look at those big items, and I think it was 650,000 or 700 last year, and we go through that every year, correct?
Correct.
And essentially, for the people at home, there's a provision that employees accumulate a certain amount of sick time, and then we pay it out. And there's a limit on the city side, and
That's correct.
I don't believe there's a limit on the school side, or is it a third? There's no limit?
They're working on, right, correct.
Okay, they're working on it, okay. Are we working on it as well? Is that something?
Obviously, Counselor, I can't get into too much detail because we're in the process of negotiating, and that's done in closed sessions. But I can assure the council, assure the citizens that we're looking at pretty much everything, putting everything on the table that's a major cost item to us, and looking at what possibilities are out there to modify those in the future. It may be worthwhile at some point in the near future to have a meeting with the council in executive session where we can talk about some of the strategies we're looking at and what we see as some of the issues that we'd like to address.
Okay, and I just raise it as we have at prior finance subcommittee meetings, because it is a large ticket item, and we look at savings in energy and healthcare costs, and this is certainly one of them where it was used as an incentive, not not people abuse sick time, but it's something that if we can get an update on that, I think that would be helpful, and knowing that you're working on trying to bring down these costs as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before us, we have the first of two more unions that are coming before us to ratify a contract, and it is the Lowell Traffic Supervisors Association. We have the city engineers, and we have the police, New England Police Benevolent Association, Local 10. These three unions that are before us for ratification, and we see 0% increase in salary for 2010, 2011, July 1st, 2011 to June 30th, 2012. These are our city people. These are our city workers that when the call is put forth, they respond to it. And this is a remarkable accomplishment between the manager and the unions, on top of the fact that we've reached an agreement with the health insurance package. You're looking at people that work very hard, and you try sometimes to try to get a raise, and here they are going zero. So I think this is remarkable. I publicly want to thank these unions for such a great effort. They know that times are tough. They're just remarkable to do this, and I want them to know how we feel, that this is really a great thing that they're doing for our city.
Councilor Noon and then Councilor Broderick.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to echo my fellow councilors to congratulate you for your accomplishment with these negotiation with the union. On the other hand, too, is that the union member, the three new union that took their willingness to, not getting raised, for this and to work with the city in tough time. The other things I would just want to comment is that it's about time that the police unions have the ballistic vest. They should have that all a long time ago. They need to have those proper equipment, because they are in the first line of duty, front line. So we need to assist them as best as we can. Thank you.
Councilor Broderick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also want to reiterate and congratulate the manager for holding the line and getting this deal done. But as importantly, I think to thank the union representatives and the union members that voted on it to come in at zero. Especially after they took a bit of a beating, and I think it's in some of the public arenas in terms of the health insurance, and some battle lines were drawn. It's good to see that everybody did come together in the best interest of the city, Mr. Manager. And I think, cooperating and negotiating out in the health insurance is certainly paying off. And it's good to see that everybody steps up and does what's right for the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councilor Elliott.
Mayor, can I just follow, Mr. Moses, can we get a breakdown maybe by department on the vacation buyback, sick vacation, and I think even personal time included? I'm just curious to see where, where the money is, or what departments, and maybe there's no trend, maybe there's, I'd just like to see a breakdown that I think would be helpful going into the fiscal year. And I know you can't give out names, I'm not saying names, but I think that report would be helpful. I don't know if I have to make that in the form of a amendment, but...
Well, we've got just a vote here, so,
Okay.
In the form of just a request, I suppose.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Manager.
Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to provide the councilor with that information, have Mr. Moses pull that together. Just so I'm clear, though, councilor, you're looking for the aggregate within each union? You're asking for, I know not by name, but by individual?
Well, I know in the budget it's one line item.
Right.
I think it's under your, when it comes
yeah,
in
on
under
the
your...
sick time, yes.
On the sick time,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, okay, we can do that.
Any further discussion on the vote? Councilor Martin.
Any reason why I can't vote all three of these together?
Second.
Motion by Councilor Martin
Good.
to take all of these items together, seconded by Councilor Kennedy. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So voted. Roll call, please.
Councilor Mercia.
Triple yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Councilor Nguyen.
Yes.
Councilor Broderick.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Laurie.
Yes.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
Councilor Madonza.
Yes.
9 yeas on all three, so voted on all three.
Next, we have subcommittee reports. Councilor Laurie.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Tonight, the Education Partnership Subcommittee met at 5:30, and they received an update from Chancellor Meehan on the many projects going on up at Lowell. Probably the most noticeable for the people in the city would be the North Campus. He talked a little bit about the new emerging technology building, the new parking garage on North Campus, the Manning School that will be built at the corner of Riverside and University, talk a little bit about the new East Campus dorms going up, another 472 rooms, in which will be designed very much like downtown Lowell. In the South Campus, the Health and Science new buildings, and Marginal Way, which will be 510-bed dormitory. A little bit about transportation, but basically the goals that they have at the university and University Crossing, what it will eventually be. I guess they're going to knock down just the front building, and it'll be a student engagement center along with some offices, a bookstore, and a dining room. We didn't convene the meeting tonight. It's the chancellor's wish, along with the managers and the council's wish, to keep dialogue open with the university, keep the partnership moving. So in that good faith, we kept the meeting. We didn't adjourn. We recessed. And we also hopefully will have a meeting of the subcommittee on North Campus at Cumnock Hall, which does have a live feed, from what I understand. And not only would that allow the university to host a partnership, but it would allow the people in Pawtuckaville, the citizens in Pawtuckaville, a much easier time to attend the meetings, and would really open up the government. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Counselor. Do we have any? Counselor Mercia?
Yes, thank you very much. And of course, as Chairman Laurie said, this subcommittee was recessed so that there'd be further discussion. But we did talk about the Textile Memorial Bridge, and it's a shame through my motion that we realize it won't be standing, that they have to tear that bridge down. The current bridge must be torn down for the new bridge to be built, because if not, the new bridge cannot make the connection it needs to the road without the old bridge down. So it's quite evident that Chancellor Meehan said that they met with the Secretary of Transportation, and it was known that it's really structurally unsound, would cost an exorbitant amount of money, extreme amount, to shore it up to where it would be serviceable. And having said that, we do know that this bridge was dedicated in memory of 16, perhaps 18 servicemen that were killed that attended the Technological Institute years ago in 1947. Having said that, we had discussion about what are we going to do to replace that? If the bridge comes down, how will we still honor those individuals? And there will be follow-up meetings, and the chancellor and the city will come together to establish some sort of proper memorial for those people. So I think we're not forgetting about them, and it's a shame the bridge has to come down, but we have to do what is right for the community as a whole, not just maybe my special interest or whatever, but we will not forget those servicemen. And Councilor Laurie also suggested that the veterans groups be invited to that particular meeting so that they can weigh in on what they'd like to see done there. I'm certainly sure we will not forget those veterans. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Laurie?
Yeah, thank you very much. The bridge itself, that was referred to the Transportation Subcommittee, and I chair that also. There will be a subcommittee meeting down the line, and the bridge will be discussed, and we'll be talking, I'm sure, about the cost. And of course, the wish of the manager, the chancellor, and the council to include the veterans in any decision that will be made in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the report? Entertain a motion to accept and as a report of
The
progress.
communication is presented.
Motion to accept by Councilor Mercia, second by Councilor Broderick. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. I would also say that tomorrow we have a subcommittee meeting on facilities jointly with the school department at 6 o'clock here in City Hall chambers. If there are any other announcements, seeing none, we'll move on from the subcommittee reports to utility petitions, general petitions. We have one claim for property damage.
refer to the Law Department.
Motion to refer to the Law Department by Councilor Mercia, seconded by Councilor Mendonça. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Moving on to utility petitions. We have a petition from National Grid and Verizon New England for a pole location at Pawtucket Street. Entertain a motion to refer to a public hearing at March 6th at 7 p.m. The petition for pole location, National Grid and Verizon New England pole location at Pawtucket Street, in City Council, read at February 14th, 2012. Motion by Councilor Mendonça to refer to a public hearing on the 6th. Seconded by Councilor Martin. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Moving on to the motion section of the agenda, we have a motion by Councilor Martin. Request city manager have city solicitor with license commission report on regulation and policies requiring licensed liquor establishments to hire detail officers. Seconded by Councilor Kennedy. Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know that this is topic is going to be discussed at a special meeting on Thursday, but in preparation for that, I thought there's a couple things. One is I thought that generally, at least speaking for myself, would like a better understanding of the respective roles and jurisdictions, you know, of the council, of the license commission, perhaps of the manager, the police department, and that's really what led me to file this motion. After that, I received the packet that Mr. Occasion from the License Commission distributed to all of us, which I thought was very helpful. I don't necessarily agree with the conclusion reached at the end of that, but I thought the discussion and the analysis of the respective jurisdictions of various bodies was helpful. I think it's helpful to get more information like that, and that was really what I wanted to know about this motion is what is a policy, if there is one, that we have in place for police details. You know, years ago when I was involved with CYO dances, you know, you'd always have to leave money in the budget for a detail officer. If you're expecting more than 100 people, you'd have to get an officer. Sometimes you'd want that anyway, even if you didn't trip whatever the requirement was. And what I'd like to know is there such a requirement now? Where does it come from? Is it by ordinance? Is it by license commission policy? Is it just by custom? Is it by the discretion of the individual bar owner, whether they think they need one or not? So I'd like to know what the policy is, what the source of law is for that, and what's the ability of the council to change it if so desired, if that's something that we want to do.
Thank you. Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, Councilor Martin is asking a lot of questions and information regarding his motion about detail and things like that, and I am asking some questions too, so I would like to include these questions in with his. It's not in the form of a motion, so I'm not violating any ethics rules. I'm just asking questions, and in case you forgot, I wrote them all down so we can say we didn't forget. But if we could compile some data for my concerns and provide information for the last 3 years, I'd like to know how many drunk/disorderly conduct-related alcohol arrests were made in the downtown by the paid detail officers, and the same request for patrol police officers in the downtown. I want to know who's arresting who. Is it the detail officer provided by the establishment, or is it the patrolling officers going through the downtown? How many drunk/disorderly conduct-related alcohol arrests were made outside of the downtown area? Well, there's other bars outside of the area. How many do we? I'd also like to know if any arrests were attributed to underage drinking in the downtown bars, and if so, how many arrests were made by paid detail officers, and the same request for patrol police officers in the downtown. I want to know who's doing all the work down here, what's going on here. And that's my concern, and this is I'll give you the paper that I know we don't have the answer, but I just would like to know that.
Yeah,
Mr. Manager.
and Counselor, I don't have that, and I know you wouldn't expect me to have that.
No.
And I'm not sure the police department has that readily available. They have the arresting officer. They don't necessarily break it down. What I think the only way that you would be able to do that, and particularly going back 3 years, is to go back and check who the arresting officers were, and then check that against the regular schedule versus the detail schedule, and day by day as you went through that. So that may take a little bit of time, but
Well,
we'll
let's
see
go
what we
back
can do
2
then.
years then.
Well, even, right.
Well, I could have said 5, but I didn't. Two's
I could have said a week, but no, I understand. And I think that it's a very interesting question, and for all I know, they're very data driven over there. They might have that readily available, but I'll have to check with the superintendent on that. We'll see what we can do to pull that information together.
Because I'm curious to know if restaurants or bars or lounge have to hire detail officers. Do they have to hire bouncers? I don't know any of these questions. When the police are patrolling downtown, and I know we have a problem, and we're going to discuss this Thursday, are the police going around the downtown in a cruiser, or are they getting downtown and they're walking?
I think they're doing both, actually.
And why couldn't we have a courtesy walkthrough with the police, walking through these establishments? And I want to know if a police officer that is on detail, I didn't write this down either, I'm sorry, but there's a lot of questions that have to be had, so that's a good motion to know, what is this policy, what's going on? If someone, can the police officer on detail duty question the patrons in there and say, can I see your ID? Or is it only the bouncer that can do that? I don't know what their restriction is. Even though they're paid detail, they probably are restricted in what they can do. I don't know that. I want to know. Are they restricted in any way? That's what I want to know. Is there fines for urinating and what is that fine? Because if they don't have respect for the city, I don't have respect for their wallet, and that's very important to me. So this is a very good motion to get some answers to these things. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Elliott.
Well, we do have an ordinance for municipal buildings that, based upon the number of people attending a function, they're required to have both fire and police officers. But I think the next motion follows up on, what the law is. Is there a law that will require, private establishments to have a detail on staff? So I'm presuming right now those establishments that do put a detail officer on, it's not a city ordinance anyway, right, Madam Solicitor or Mr. Manager?
Madam Solicitor.
Right, there's currently no such requirement that's mandated by the License Commission, nor is there any requirement that I'm aware of in the Mass General laws speaking to this particular issue. It's something that we can take a look at. We've also begun, as a result of the motion, taking a look at what some other communities are doing as well, and whether they also are requiring detail officers or not. What we've seen so far is that it's not a practice that that communities, at least that we've been checking with, have mandatory detail officers at liquor establishments.
Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next motion by Councilor Martin. Request the city manager have city solicitor report on the legality or changes in law needed to require licensed establishments to hire detail officers. Seconded by Councilor Kennedy. Councilor Martin.
So that's a good lead in. The solicitor says, she's not aware of any such requirement. Councilor Mercier is asking questions about, where are the incidents? Are they inside? Are they outside? Where I was headed with this is, so if there is no such law or policy, can there be one? Can it be ours? Can it be our ordinance? Does it have to be a license commission directed initiative? And then also, if say we had an ordinance that required if you had 100 people inside, you had to have a detail officer. Well, can we have one also hired to be outside? Because I think, what we're seeing, at least the reports I'm getting from people who are in the downtown, is that you have places that are, that aren't a problem downtown. Then you have places that have big crowds, over-serving, have police officers inside on detail, so there's not usually any incidents on the inside of the place. But then, the place closes and people that have been drinking for 4 or 5 hours get pushed out into the street, and then there's somebody else's problem, our problem, the business's problem, the rest of the citizens have to now deal with that situation. And that's really where the police presence is needed. And we have increased that, I know, through use of overtime and thing. But the chief said earlier today that funding that's available is not going to last, at least through the fiscal year. So there's going to need to be some other method to fund these patrols. So, there are many problems, and I don't want to have this meeting tonight dominated by this discussion, but that's where I was headed with as one possible idea. And if it is a feasible idea, who has to do it? Can we do it? Do we need a change in state law to do it? Can the License Commission do it?
Thank you. Councilor Laurie and then Councilor Noon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Mercy had some great questions on detailed officers and what their rights are, and through you to the solicitor. Could we make an ordinance, if, for example, if a detailed officer isn't allowed to take an ID, or do certain things within a nightclub, could we actually draw an ordinance that would give them that right?
Madam Solicitor.
I believe actually that they would possess that right now. While 138 is silent as to a lot of these issues, the intent of 138 is for the jurisdiction to rest with the License Commission on matters that pertain to the regulation of liquor establishments. Some of these issues, however, may spill out into a more generalized ordinance, and it depends ultimately what approach the city through the various agencies ends up taking. If the use of mandatory paid detail officers is done in as a penalty for an establishment that has a problem, then I think even despite the silence of 138, it's something that would rest then with the authority of the License Commission. But if it was done in a more broad manner, it may be something that could be appropriately done through an ordinance. So we're trying to work through those issues as quickly as possible, and be prepared and give something to the council in writing in advance of Thursday's meeting, if possible. Shoot out an email during the day, Thursday.
Great, thank you so much.
Yep.
Councilor Noon and then Councilor Kennedy.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to the city solicitor. Given that the License Commission, the right rests on them, that given the power then to set condition for the establishment. Is that correct?
Yes, generally they would have broad jurisdiction to set different requirements and restrictions on their licenses.
Such as requiring to have a detail officer presence in the establishment.
Right, that's something that hasn't been, that they don't currently have a policy on, but it's something that we can explore with them in terms of developing such a policy. And again, we want to spend a little bit more time researching it and what the implications are. There are practical issues too that arise from that. If there is such a requirement, what happens to an establishment if as is sometimes the case, there is no detail officer available to carry out that detail. Or if a detail officer does show up, but then has a health issue and has to leave, where does that leave that establishment? Practical questions like that, as well as the legal implications of it, so.
So they can set those conditions, such as requiring to have detail officers and setting the hour of closing back to, for example, now at 2 o'clock, so they can make those conditions to set it to, let's say, 1 o'clock, and giving 6-month period for review.
Right, generally speaking, those types of conditions are well within the jurisdiction of the License Commission.
That's
And they can be done in a very targeted way for the most part.
Have they done, have they done so thus far on any establishment?
As far as, when some of these matters are brought before the License Commission, they, what the penalty is may vary between establishments, although I would assume that there is an attempt to have a certain consistency, given whatever the charges are and whatever the evidence is, and then ultimately what the punishment might end up being.
I see. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Kennedy.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, like probably every member on this city council, I've had discussions with several people on this whole issue over the past several days, and one of the gray areas seems to be what is the responsibility or the role of the police officer that's on detail. Because although they're employee of the city of Lowell, they're being hired on that evening by the bar or by the establishment. And so, you know, I'm not sure, and I think that it might be somewhat a gray area as to where their loyalty should lie and where their responsibility lies and who their responsibility is to first. And I don't know if it's set by statute or by ordinance or by anything, but there is a policy that's either written or unwritten that has developed, and that it seems to me that policy is worth reviewing, whatever it is. I don't know what it is, but I'm sure that the police chief knows what it is, and that would be good to have for Thursday, because I don't think that's the main issue, but that's like a little side issue that might be part of the corrective measures that we want to take after Thursday.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councilor Elliott.
Thank you. This is along the lines, a little bit away from the detail officer, but does the licensing commission issue permits for entertainment, live entertainment, or is that something different?
We are actually, they have been doing that. Council, you may be referring to the recent development out in Springfield where the mayor is issuing the entertainment licenses. And I think so we're doing some research on that. That's somewhat of a new concept, and I've spoken to a few people about that, and I know the solicitor is looking at this as well. And so there is the possibility that the entertainment licenses might be something that's separate from the License Commission.
Because I think one of the issues, has been mentioned, we're talking to many people throughout the community, is that the DJs are hired and the DJs are paid from the receipts at the door, from the cover charges. So naturally, in the day and age of modern technology, when a DJ is hired, they're sending out Facebook, they're posting on Facebook and sending out Twitter messages to have people come to the place where they're playing their music, which, so I didn't know what, I don't know what the implications of that are. You get people into your establishments for sure, but I didn't know if that was, I just didn't know who issues the permits, who issues the license, and what's that based on? I mean, the capacity certainly has to, there's a capacity of each establishment, and that certainly has to be set or taken into consideration by the licensing commission.
Right. Yeah, generally, it's been the licensing. In most communities, I think it has been the licensing authority. But again, there's some new ideas being talked about in some other communities that we're looking at. And then there's the whole capacity issue too. That we have the fire department, particularly with the some changes in statute that have a much more active role now in checking on capacity. And in fact, that was one of the issues that we ran into at the Fortunatos incident, that the fire department went out and did some investigation work out there the very next day, as did our inspectional services, building and health, along with the police, looking at some of those capacity issues. If I may, just on a point that was raised regarding outside details, many communities don't necessarily require a detail officer inside an establishment for a variety of reasons. Perhaps even going into the area that Councilor Kennedy mentioned, there's some other reasons for that as well, with regards to liability and the like. But I am familiar with a number of communities that have, in fact, required detail officers be hired to be outside the establishment to deal with issues that may result in and around that establishment. It's left up to the establishment to actually pay that bill. So it can be done to outside details are within realm of possibility. That has been more the licensing as opposed to an ordinance or action of the council, but we'll explore that.
Thank you. Councilor Lowry.
Thank you once again, Mr. Mayor. Probably for the city manager or through you to the city solicitor. Talking about, say, DJs or bands, some of them carry a higher risk than others as they come into town. And I was wondering if it would be possible to draw an ordinance on entertainment by a risk factor. How many police they would need in the building, according to the risk of a performer coming in. I don't know if that's possible, but some entertainment today, it's at a higher risk than others. I don't want to penalize a DJ, someone who's in high school or college or a retiree doing, that has a little job, but there are some entertainers that carry a higher risk, and I wonder if that's possible. Thank you.
Madam Solicitor?
I guess, do you want me to weigh in with my legal opinion? I think that I understand exactly, Councilor Lowry, what you're saying. I think the difficulty there would be determining the level of risk that a particular, how one would decide that.
I was looking at a possible background of how many performances they had, how many arrests, things like that. If they carry a background of 20 concerts and there's been multiple arrests, it's some of them, things to that nature. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further discussion? Yes. Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just concerned, did the bars downtown have to hire bouncers, or they don't need a bouncer? I don't know that question. I'd like to know that. And I'm going to give you a question that's hypothetical in a way, but it's concerning to me. Let's say that Joe Mendonça and I bought a bar downtown, and we are open for a week, and we see that these two people are going to they're arguing, and I know that it's going to escalate into a fight. Do we, A, tell them to leave and, get out of our establishment, knowing that full well they could escalate into the street, wake up the neighbors, and there's a ruckus? Or B, do we then tell the bouncer and the police detail that we have that we want them to kind of stop? If they don't stop, we're going to call the police. Well, we know they're not going to stop, and we don't want to put them outside. So Joe and I decide we're going to call the police. The police come in, and they get arrested. Now, we felt that B would have been the best solution, to leave it in our establishment so it doesn't escalate out into the neighborhood and cause a commotion, wake up the neighbors. But now we're labeled with a black mark that says, this incident at Joe and I's bar happened 5 times within a month. Now, we're labeled 5 times as, they're the bad bar that has 5 incidents. People, they call the police 5 times. How do we not do the right thing then? What do we do here? We don't know what we're supposed to do. I mean, I think it was noble of us to call the police and keep it in our establishment so it don't escalate and cause a ruckus, and yet we're labeled as having the police come to our place 5 times. So how do we win here? I don't know what the answer to that is.
I probably shouldn't open a bar, but
I'm not opening in a bar.
Madam
We
Solicitor.
ain't doing it, Joe.
That is a problem, and it's a dilemma. And I mean, we've even experienced it here, talking about group homes, the transitional living center, the library. When we call the police when there's an incident happening, then suddenly it's marked as a problem place. And you raise a very good point, and I know that some of the bar owners have raised that to us as well. So it's I don't have a good answer for you though on that.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yeah, just on that same issue, and that's something else that I've had discussions with over the past few days, but what I get from the License Commission is that there's a reluctance to call the police because you get that black mark that Councilor Mercy is talking about. And you could have, if it was the Mercy of Mendonça bar, they might call the cops 12 times, and nobody's ever hurt, nobody's arrested, because they do it on a preventative basis. So the cops come, they take care, they have the people move out, and there's no trouble. But they've called the cops 12 times. Now, Council Laurie and I could have a bar, and we may never call the cops, but when they come, there's always a whole melee going on. People are getting their heads smashed in and everything else. But we look better than them, even though we've never called the cops, because we've only got 3 or 4 marks on us, and they've got a dozen. That reluctance to call the cops that's not a good thing, and that seems to exist. I've heard the License Commission members refer to that, and we need to take a look at that. There has to be when a bar calls the cops, and the cops respond, that visit to the establishment should be measured. And they shouldn't all be held equal. If you come in there and everything's all set and you leave and there's no more problem for the rest of the night, that shouldn't count against you the way, something like what happened at Fortunato's on Thursday night counts. They seem to be treated equally because generally when you go if a bar has to go before the License Commission, it's usually after there's a series of incidents, and so there's a history that's developed, and nobody really remembers that, well, yeah, in July, but that was no big deal. We called the cops twice in July, but there was never any fight or anything. It's just, you called the cops twice in July. That whole thing has to be, I think, that procedure has to be revisited as part of the solution to this whole thing. That's just, it's just bad.
Councilor Broderick and then Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree, and I think that's really just a matter of, hopefully, at another meeting Thursday night and in the future, maybe discussing and getting on the same page in terms of what the reporting is going to be and what the details are going to be. Because you're right, if everybody that makes a call gets marked the same way, regardless of what happens at the call or whose fault it is, I think you create that impression that you're better off not calling. Just get these people out of your establishment and let it be someone else's problem, or else your license is on the line. So it could be we just need a few more questions answered when the reporting is done or the totals are made. But it should be a simple matter of discussion and, so that the License Commission understands what the police are reporting, the police understand what the License Commission needs, what we all here agree on, and in what our roles are in the process in terms of our jurisdiction in all these decisions. But I think this begs the question of, what are we going to do? How do we resolve this? And how do we get everyone together to try and come up with an answer that everybody understands and everybody's on board with? It should be pretty simple. Whatever the process is now is not necessarily working, and it's not creating a level playing field, and I think it's probably not in the best interest of getting the best result here. So it should be something we can take up and get solved.
Thank you. Councilor Martin.
Yeah, all valid points, but we're not getting a whole lot of complaints about people whose licenses are being impacted because they call the cops. You know, if anything, we get the data from the License Commission, there were very few disciplinary actions last year, so I'm not seeing that people who are calling the police are being, you know, unfairly penalized. But maybe we do have this situation that Councilor Kennedy and Laurie's bar, because that is what's happening. I mean, Pete, you know, we're not getting complaints about what's happened inside of places, with the exception of the serious incident at Fortunato's. The bigger problem before that incident happened was the unruliness outside in the downtown. And that, I think, is a separate problem from the incidents at Fortunato's. I have full confidence that the License Commission's going to deal very effectively with the incident that happened inside of an establishment. What's the harder thing is to deal with what's going on outside, and I'll look forward to the discussion on that on Thursday.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have a motion by Councilor Martin. City Council requests the city manager report on the estimated completion date for repairs being made to the Central Street Bridge over the Pawtucket Canal. Seconded by Councilor Kennedy. Councilor Martin.
Thank you. I know this project was delayed, and once they got into the bridge and dug it up, you know, as often happens in these cases, they found the damage was more extensive than was anticipated. And I know we had a prior report to that effect, but just wondering if we had, hopefully there's no further problems, and whether they've got a sense as to when this might be completed.
Mr. Manager.
I can give you a verbal on that. My understanding is it's mid-March. Now, early to mid-March. The issue right now is they need to do some work underneath the bridge, and the only way they can do that is on a barge, and the canals right now have been emptied to deal with some maintenance issues at another location that they're working on. So they're shooting right now based on the latest information of early to mid-March.
Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have a council motion by Councilor Laurie. City Council requests city manager ask all new appointees to come before the city council at the time of appointment or at the next following meeting of the city council.
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Kennedy. Councilor Laurie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, I had noted I wasn't going to vote for anyone that doesn't come before the council, and I will maintain that. But I want to put in a form of motion that, one, it's all new board appointments, not reappointments. These people have served the city, they've put a lot of time in, and there's no need for them to come here. I'm just looking for new appointments. And on the night stay, and it doesn't have to be maybe the night they're going to be voted in, maybe the following week, but I'd like to see them here on one of those 2 nights. And even possibly, I thought a couple of weeks ago, Councilor Mercy had a motion that all new department heads come before the council, and I thought that was good. And I thought also what Councilor Mercy did was great. We suspended the rules to do it right away. So maybe on a new appointment, we could do something similar. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilman Mendonça.
I'll just make a request from a resident who said she watches these proceedings regularly every Tuesday, and she said that when they are present at chambers, if we could show them on television. She said she knew that the 3 Board of Assessors people were here, but all she got to see was their shoes when they had a shot of that side of the council. And so maybe as part of the process, if we could just have the camera either show them or have them go to the podium, just to stand for a minute or so. Well, they're less than a minute, just long enough for the people at home to get to see them as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have a motion by Councilor Elliott. Request the City Council discuss the permitting of construction on 44 Wall Street. Seconded by Councilor Broderick.
Thank you. We all get this email concerning a resident complaining about the construction at 44 Wall Street, Mr. Manager. And so when I read it, I thought I would file a motion on it. we did receive a response from Mr. Marchand on it, and I appreciate it, but I guess I was concerned that the email from this person said that she contacted Inspectional Services on several occasions, and that construction did continue, permits were not posted outside, et cetera, et cetera. Mr. Marchand indicated that the city had been out on numerous occasions, so I'm trying to understand where and why the complaint came, and yet it seems that we had been out there on some occasion. Why does this continue? And since that time, I received, and I have 2 more addresses, Henry, Mr. Marchand, of similar complaints that they've called into Inspectional Services, and I don't want to give the addresses publicly, but I will leave them after the meeting, because they are apparently, or presumably, allegedly, illegal apartments. Construction is being done. Complaints have been called in, and yet the work continues, and I have the woman's name, by the way. So that was the purpose of the motion. I don't know, what the process is, and I appreciate getting the message from Mr. Marchand, but I was also concerned, Mr. Manager, why is Henry doing the job of the building commissioner?
Well, he's not.
I mean, I'm glad I got the information, but why is it Mr. Marsilia giving us that information? Or
Mr. Manager?
Well, the complaint came into my office. I handed it off to, and this is the way I'm operating my office. The complaint came to me. I asked Henry to follow up and get the report, and he got the report, and he responded on my behalf to the council. It was actually, I believe, Councilor Mendonça and Councilor Broderick who sent that email on to me so that we heard about it. Otherwise, we don't hear about these things. Mr. Marchand followed up and got the word back to the council so the council knew what was happening. In this particular case of Wall Street, and this does happen from time to time. People see things happening, and we count on people letting us know that there's work taking place, and we go out and we check on those properties. And too often, we find that there's work taking place that requires a permit. We put a stop work order on, tell them to stop, they have to come in for a permit, and they do so. In the particular case of Wall Street, we have spoken to the resident who called to complain, and I think that there's an understanding now of what took place out there. But there were two bits of work taking place. Some people were replacing some cabinets, taking down some cabinets. That does not require a permit. There was some other work going on that did not require a permit. They had a trailer out in front of the yard where they were putting the cabinets in, and we asked them to move that trailer to the side of the house, they weren't actually required to do that, but they did. It just took an extra day. And again, I understand the frustration of the resident nearby who saw all this taking place. But since that time, they have now moved into work that does require permits, specifically a roof and doing some sheetrocking. So they do have the permits now at this location. But in these cases, just as anytime anybody sees something taking place, we ask them to call us if they feel that there's something that is out of, inappropriate or out of the ordinary, and then we go right out and we check on that. But as far as why Mr. Marchand does that as opposed to someone else, we just as we don't, generally speaking, you don't necessarily have Mr. Snow or Mr. Bellegarde or any number of other employees, department heads getting back to you. They're doing their thing, and Mr. Marchand is here to coordinate responses to the council.
Okay, well, I do get emails from Mr. Snow and Mr. Bellegarde and Christine and you, and so Henry's got a lot to do. I certainly know I forward a lot of stuff to him as well, and it was just a question. Mm-hmm. And these other two, and I understand your point, but there's one on Princeton Boulevard. I mean, and this one is very clear. Someone's doing construction. She's called many times about an attic. Another one, another location very close by. People have completely built out or they're living in a garage. So, I know, I guess these illegal apartments or illegal work continues, and when people do make complaints like this one, and I'm glad this was followed up, but again, I'll give you these addresses, but I think it's important that we do follow up, and that we, the public knows, or I shouldn't say the public, people know they just have to go through the permitting process, and the city is going to go out and take those actions.
Yeah,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And again, Counselor, I appreciate, and if you give those addresses to Mr. Marchand, that would be very helpful, and I can assure you that we do go out every time we get a complaint of this sort, and the number of illegal apartments that, we've been tracking some of this data and this information, and we've picked up more illegal apartments over the last number of months, particularly since we started doing the certificate of inspection program, which had not been done in the city for a number of years, that, these multifamily dwellings have to be checked every 5 years. And so we're out there, we're doing it, and we're finding when we go out there that, in fact, there are these illegal apartments that we're catching and taking appropriate action. But I appreciate you urging people to report to us, and also the people to get in touch with us for permitting.
And how do you go through that? I know this is a little bit off the subject, but how does the city know when an apartment is vacated? And because every time an apartment is vacated, and correct me if I'm wrong, a new occupancy permit has to be issued. Is that correct?
It's a
Certificate of
habitability. I can't recall the exact. It's a
state law, right?
No, it's actually a unique Lowell ordinance that we require that the unit be inspected. It's a certificate of vacancy, I think is the actual title. But and that's a very difficult one, because particularly if you're looking at a 3-family across the street and you see someone moving out, you might think, okay, I'm going to call. It's somewhat of a unique ordinance. You might call and say, okay, someone's moving out. I just want to make sure they got the place inspected. But then you have the apartment complexes, where generally speaking, people are in and out, and nobody necessarily contacts us. But we do try to communicate. That's through the health department or the health inspectors, that they're supposed to get those units reviewed. Mr. Singleton and I, before the reorganization, talked about a variety of ideas as we went through this reorganization that we felt would be more appropriate, that requires that we go out on a more regular basis, and that would eliminate the need for the vacancy. And the certificate of inspection actually does something very similar to that.
So what about Section 8s? Because I know there's quite a few Section 8s in the city. Do those organizations that issue those, either to the individual or to the to the home, I'm going to presume there's got to be some oversight, some accountability.
Those, I think, more commonly are reported to us, so that we go out and do those inspections, and they do their own
Right, they do their
inspections.
own.
Right.
Okay.
CTI, for instance, would do their own.
Right, CTI, Housing Authority. Are there any other agencies in the city that
Those
issue?
are the two. The CTI is the major
Pretty much,
one
right.
for the region. There may be some others that have some
Okay.
certificates
No,
here.
there's all helpful information. Thank you, Mr. Manager.
Councilor Broderick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Manager, there was a point made that calls should be followed up on, and my question is, through the STAT program, are we logging these calls and then logging the follow-up, or what the result is and how long it takes? And I know this was talked before the STAT program, when we're calling it performance evaluations and performance-based and all that. So are all these calls being logged and then followed and so on in each department?
Yes, in inspectional services, they are all that was an initiative that we put in place, utilizing the Munis code enforcement module that we've had for years and weren't utilizing. That in fact we would be able to log those and track how long it takes to get out, and and also most importantly, for instance, on this Wall Street property, we can go into the database there and see exactly which inspector went out, at which time, and what they found when they went out.
That is helpful, and another good question was raised in terms of these the certificates, habitability, whatever it is, in the bigger apartment buildings. Could the city simply develop some type of form for these property owners, management companies, similar to what you get for a commercial property, where you send it out, you fill in, give proof of who your tenants are, and the city can simply compare it to last year's? If there's been a change, look for an occupancy or whatever the certificate, the habitability, whatever it is, maybe a little bit of a streamline, because there's a lot of units in this city, and it's going to be difficult to monitor, new cars parking in spots and so on, but on a annual basis to see what turnover there is, and put the burden on the landowners, the landlords or the management companies to prove who's there, who's still there, and if anything's changed, to prove, produce the occupancies, the necessary certificates. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Mendonça and then Councilor Laurie.
Yes, related to this issue, what happens in the case where the work is begun before the permit's taken out? And I don't know if it was the case in this one, but when the response I got back, they had taken out the permits the date I got the response. So I'm not sure if that was after work began or if it began that same day. But what can the city do as a penalty to discourage work starting before the permit's issued?
Well, in this particular case, my understanding that the work that had been taking place before that prompted the email, and there'd been communications back and forth with a variety of offices on this property, was work that did not require permits, but that in fact it did need a new roof, and there had been a permit pulled on that, and I believe that they were going to do some sheetrocking, and that required a permit. So those came at around that same time. So that was, I think, in part, it's hard to say, I guess would be the best way to say that, was it because this resident notified us that this was taking place? Maybe they might have known that they needed a roof permit, but they might not have known they needed a sheetrock. So it was helpful that this resident, and again, we depend upon people notifying us so we can go out and check on it. But if they're doing work, if we catch people doing work without a permit, we stop the work. We go to court if need be. Mr. Marcellia spends about a day a week in court on these stop work orders, and then we require them. We can require them to, in fact, take the work out and start it all over again if need be. But in many cases, if it's a contractor that's doing that should know better, there can be sanctions taken. Generally, I think most of these cases that we find, it's not necessarily a contractor, it's someone doing work around their house that isn't aware.
Is there a penalty in place for having begun the work without a permit? I mean, once we can determine that. If the city
I'd have to check on that.
Okay, if you could report back to us, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Councilor Laurie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm glad they had permits. I took a ride out to Wall Street as late as today, and, some work being done, so I'm glad they pulled the permits. My question is, illegal apartments that was brought up, do you know what the fine is for that?
I don't know that off the top of my head, Councilor.
Did I get that information?
I mean, in illegal, sure, we'll follow up on that.
I don't know what it is. I like to make it as strong as possible, not to see it done. When father's the other question on people, when apartment empties, I was a mailman, and I'll see D.C. Cooper before I'll see some of the people who lived on my roof. They just disappear, so.
Councilor Elliott.
Just follow up. Mr. Mayor, did you say that Mr. Marcellia spends about a day a week?
Well, it's not the
generally
entire day,
speaking, I mean,
right.
that's a lot of stop work orders. How many do we, or have we issued in, I don't know, last year, 6 months?
I don't have that off the
Can
top
we
of my head.
just get that? I'm kind of curious. I mean, again, to send a message that you need to, pull permits, and if not, there are repercussions.
I know that he's regularly in court, and going into court, of course, takes sitting there waiting for cases to be heard can take some time. But I will get that information
Because I'm going to presume that the Westminster Village or Westminster Apartments, was that issued a?
Well, keep in mind,
Court order?
we go in for a court order when they're continuing to do, if we put a stop work and they stop work, we're all set. But if they're not stopping work, then we have to go in and seek some type of court action.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Broderick.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I do have to give Mr. Marsili and his department a plug here. I was in court last Monday, housing court, and he was covering a number of cases, violations, and the judge actually had a different case before him and asked Mr. Marsili, and it involved some code violations, private situation, landlord and tenant, and asked Mr. Marsili if he would be able to go out and make a call and get the history on the case. And unfortunately, I was there waiting and waiting for my case to be called, so I saw it unfold, and he actually was able to go out, get a hold of the department, and get the history and report it to the judge. So I was actually impressed with the tracking. That's why one of the reasons I was curious if we track all the calls that come in or just the ones that we take action on. And I'm glad to hear that we track them all, but I am also should give him his due and his department, whoever was able to give him this information. It was helpful and saved me some time from waiting and hearing more of the case that was before me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have motion by Mayor Murphy, Councilor Noon. City Council requests City Manager develop recommendations for more stringent policies and regulation of liquor establishments and improve enforcement mechanisms for consideration by the License Commission. Councilor Noon.
Thank you, Mayor. The motion actually speaks for itself. A motion by Councilor Martin. The first two motions and this motion is all go together in a sense to address the issue of downtown. And I'm sure on Thursday we're going to expand on that and to see what role everyone play to make downtown safer for visitors as well as for the resident there. So I'm happy to be a part of this in terms of making sure that we have that safer downtown. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further discussion? Councilor Mendonça.
Yes, it's related to this, and for our meeting on Thursday, if we could have the city solicitor prepare something for us as to what our authority is vis-a-vis the License Commission. Is there an ordinance in place in city ordinances that we could amend that covers this area, or would it have to be something new that we could do? And what is left to the License Commission itself? Just off the top of my head, I assume that whatever the city puts in ordinance applies to all establishments. And the License Commission could have regulations of its own, but I think it has the added flexibility of applying conditions to specific licenses based on experience with the establishment that we as a council could not. We can't target a region and say this only applies to that region. We would apply an ordinance that would be citywide. But so if the city solicitor could at that time be prepared to give us further input on what we can or cannot do, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you. Mr. Manager?
Just and I certainly think the solicitor is going to be prepared to address a number of these issues on Thursday night, and some of these are going to take a little bit more time, but I do think that there's some potential here, and it's something we've been working on, exploring for some time with regards to regulations. The commission can put in place regulations for license holders that just lay out what their the rules of operation need to be in order for them to maintain their license. And it could deal with issues of when everything has to be cleared off tables. It could deal with the training that the staff has to go through and the proof of that. There are a number of different areas that you can have that a licensing authority, or in this case a license commission, can adopt as regulations, and those can be passed on, I think, if not by ordinance, the ordinance would be seen as interfering with the statutory responsibilities of the License Commission, that they could be passed on through vote of the council or by the manager to the License Commission as recommendations that they adopt as rules of operation for license holders. So that may be a way of doing this as well.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have a motion by Mayor Murphy and Councilor Mercia. Request the city manager report on establishment of fund through the Lowell Prescription Drug Discount Program to support opiate abuse prevention efforts. Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know that when Councilor Patrick Murphy when Mayor Murphy was councilor, and he had a tendency to file anywhere from 7 to 10 motions, I felt that as the mayor, this may change, but evidently not, seeing that you have like 8 motions. But anyways.
I was hoping that myself.
He was. I said, no way, I don't believe it. But anyways, some time ago, Mayor Patrick Murphy made a motion informing the public of a prescription program that saves money because it offers a discount on prescriptions. We learned that every time the discount card is used, it generates money. I think something like 25 cents every time it's used. And over the course of time, this little bit of money turns into a sizable sum. This dual motion by the mayor and myself establishes a fund as to where this money will go. In the town of Gloucester, with a population of about 33,000 people, the fund from this program generates over $1,000. With our population in this city, we can probably generate well over $10,000. And so we would like to direct this money to a fund that would be used for public health and initiatives such as a program aimed at the prevention of opiate use and abuse, and where educators go into the school system and tell our youth about the dangers of prescription drug dependency and opiate abuse. So I think this is a relatively good motion, one of many this evening, whereby this establishes a destination for this fund. If we could just do that, that'd be good. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Elliott.
I support the motion. Through you to the manager, how much have we generated, or has the fund been set up yet, or we haven't set it up yet?
No, it's still very new, but we will be setting this up with the auditor in a special account that and we do anticipate that we'll receive several $1,000s of people.
Thank you.
And Mr. Mayor, there are forms available in your office, in the senior center, other places as well. So if people are interested to obtain this prescription card, I believe it's free.
Right.
They can apply for it and get it free at these different locations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Broderick.
Mr. Mayor, through you, is this application available online? Folks that don't...
There actually isn't an application.
Oh, okay.
Any resident qualifies for the card.
You just pick up the card, right?
Right.
Card.
Okay. I didn't know if you could order it, or if you have to physically go somewhere, because a lot of people nowadays, it's difficult to get down here when it's open and so on. If there's a way to basically order one or apply, we could do that.
They're available in a number of different places. The senior center here, Lowell Community Health Center, a number of different places throughout the city.
All right.
The library.
Maybe we could post online where they're available, people that are interested, because I've had some people ask, and I can't remember exactly. I know they're here, senior center, but some folks, it's not practical for them to get it.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next motion, Mayor Murphy and Councilor Mendonça request the manager report on potential partnership with UMass Lowell on the GigU University Community Next Generation Innovation Project. Councilor Mendonça.
Yes, this has to do with network connectivity and being able to increase the bandwidth available. And the more bandwidth there is, then the better the experience for our internal users or for those people connecting to the city's website especially when they want to download any large amounts of information. And where it could be cost-effective and improve that experience, I think it'd be worth exploring to see if we could do it. I know that many years ago, the city had implemented either iRing or RingNet. I think the word ring was in it, which connected municipal buildings together in a high-speed network. At the time, it might not be so high-speed compared to today's rates. But again, in order to improve that experience and to improve our relationship in a partnership with UMass Lowell, I think it'd be worthwhile exploring to see if we could take advantage of it.
Thank you. Mr. Manager?
I can tell you that Adam Bakey and Teresa Park are attending a meeting on this in the next week or two. So, but we'll be anxious to report back to the council on what we found.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next motion by Mayor Murphy and Councilor Martin. City Council requests city manager report on progress of the REAL program and plan to encourage more public participation. Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The REAL program stands for Residential Energy Efficiency Loan Program. And I know back in the fall, we were trying to generate some publicity for this, and members of the council actually participated in the energy audits, which are kind of prerequisites to being able to qualify for these loans. I know Councilor Mercier and I had our audits done on the same day, and I think others, Councilor Broderick maybe, and a few others may have also participated. However, before we get a chance to publicize too much about that, you know, the lights went out on Halloween, so there really wasn't any need to report on energy audits because no one had any power coming into their houses. You know, the Sun had their own power issues and really weren't in the mood to help us promote anything at that point. They were trying to get the newspaper out. And, you know, so the lights came back on. The next week was the election, and we never really got a chance to publicize this program as we had intended. But the thought is this is funded through National Grid. Residents of Lowell, we have generally older housing stock than many other communities, and there's some thought that well, there's not a thought, but statistics show we're underutilizing this program, and our citizens could benefit from it. So as a prerequisite to that, it'd be a good idea to at least get the report and see what progress we've made to date, and then, you know, take it from there as to how we might better encourage people to use the program. I ended up making some improvements. I didn't get one of these loans. These loans, I think, are funded with city funds, and so none of us would be eligible, but there were some state programs available at the time that I think may have expired by now, but the city program is alive and well and underutilized. So I guess step one, let's see what progress has been made to date, and then see how we can encourage more participation in this. It does save on your energy bills in the long run.
Thank you. I'm not sure the reluctance on part of the paper was due to energy problems, but Councilor Elliott.
So, just along those same lines, we've had this money for a little while. What can we tell the public? What is the incentive? I know to save energy, but they have to take out a loan, right? Is that one of the sort of stumbling blocks to this? That it's not grants, it's money, it's a loan that's paid back into a fund that, you know, revolves and continues to go out. Have we had any success with this?
We have had some success. A number of people have taken advantage of it. When we're out working in neighborhoods and working with people that are doing renovations on their homes, we let them know about this program. The whole purpose of is Councilor Martin mentioned, of having the councilors participate in this is to get some publicity for the program. But it's a mix of this money is used as loans or as interest subsidies to drive down the cost of the private financing. And there are grant programs available that through the energy companies to do some of this work. So
that's what we need to get out.
Right.
That, you know, you have the audit done,
Right.
And I think audits are helpful. I had one done on my home a number of years ago, and just some small little things, but to get the word out, what's the incentive? I suppose once you make some energy improvements, it's also a credit or a tax write-off.
Correct.
So there are some things, so, good motion will, it's not just a flat-out loan, it can be, there are some other available options that, it's sort of real money and not
Correct.
just, okay.
Correct, yeah, and I can't recall, I know that we've publicized it through the website and through some of the other means that we have. I don't recall whether there was a story in the paper on this or not. I know we sent out some press releases, but I'm not sure whether that was covered.
I mean, if we say grants, that's a whole different ballgame, but
It's a
that's
whole new
not
group of
this.
people, right.
However, there are some other incentives, including, tax write-offs and maybe private programs from National Grid and the energy companies that people could be eligible for. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next motion, by Mayor Murphy and Councilor Laurie. The City Council will request City Manager develop a plan to raise participation of qualified residents in the Earned Income Tax Credit Program, including links to the website, information at public buildings, etc. Councilor Laurie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The EITC program, it's for qualified residents, usually lower income, and the idea is to put links on our websites, information in public buildings, maybe City Hall or libraries and things like that, where they may see it and see if they qualify.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next motion by Mayor Murphy and Councilor Kennedy. City Council requests City Council support a resolution drafted by the Law Department to join the City Manager in opposition to the proposed cuts to MBTA service. Councilor Kennedy.
Second.
Mr. Mayor, this motion just briefly asks that the City Council, resolution, formally join the opposition to the reduction in services being proposed by the MBTA.
Thank you, Councilor Kennedy. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted.
Mayor, could I just ask a question on that? Mr. Manager, on the cherry sheet, I know there is I know there was a cost. I mean, we received money from the state. There's an assessment. Is that part of this? And I'm sure there's probably nothing we can do about it, but because it's part of the whole local aid formula. But the assessment is for the LRTA, which is not
The MBTA. Right.
no affiliation, nothing to do with that. It's a separate regional transit authority. Okay. I support the motion. I think it's a good idea that we do this because, and it's happening around the state, including today, so it's a good motion. Thanks.
I did note as well that that was listed under the legislative agenda that the manager presented for this week. So, next motion, we have Mayor Murphy, Councilor Elliott. City Council requests the city clerk report data on the open meeting law and state ethics packets issued, the percentage passed, and the plan for full compliance. Councilor Elliott.
As the mayor and I were talking about some issues, and this one came up, and thought it was important to get a report on. There is a new open meeting law. There are new state ethics requirements. I think we all have to fill them out. So I don't know, Mayor, if you want to expand on it a little bit more. That's the motion.
I think we'll probably just refer it to maybe the first clerk's meeting at the end of the month for a report.
There is an exam that everybody, is this every year, Mr. Clerk? I know that we had to fill out that we received the information and get it.
Yeah.
I thought it was every 2 years, right?
The ethics is every 2 years.
Okay.
And
is it's not just this governing body, it's everybody
Yes.
that works, everybody that works in the city.
right.
Correct.
This was one of the issues that was noted in the in Attorney Leahy's report on the clerk's office. Any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Mercia.
Is this the second year? Or is this the first of the?
This, I believe, is we're in
year.
the second cycle of this open meeting law.
So
Yeah.
we need to
Right.
present it. By when, do we know?
I'm trying to think, I thought, did we do, I'm
Last
sorry.
week.
Didn't it go to the solicitor's office once upon a time?
I believe it went through just last year, so this would be the off year, and then it will have to be done again next year.
Okay.
I
No,
actually think
I
it
think we
went
had to
through
do this before. I remember-
2010.
I remember doing this
We're
before,
now
for
in
sure.
We did.
2000.
It's,
Madam Solicitor,
Madam Solicitor?
we're
Sure,
not going to
it's-
rely on Bernie's legal advice.
I wouldn't touch it.
Did the manager complete his ethics training?
That may be a problem there. We'll have to check on the dates, and I can coordinate with the clerk on that. Statutorily, it is the clerk who oversees this process. When it first came about, there was a number of different departments, including law, MIS, that worked closely with the clerk's office and also coordinated with the school department to pull them into this as well. So we'll check on the dates and see when people need to start getting reminders out and things of that nature, then take the exams, and then all of those reports ultimately will be filed back with the clerk's office.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Last motion of the night by Mayor Murphy, Councilor Broderick. Request the manager report on renovation of the city's website to encourage greater use of online services, new forms of public engagement, and increased potential for marketing and business development. Councilor Broderick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This it somewhat speaks for itself. A couple things that I would like to see included, Mr. Manager, through you, Mr. Mayor, in any report would be, what are we spending? What's the cost? What are any alternatives to spending the money we're spending in terms of this, open sourcing or crowdsourcing, depending on the terminology used, that could save substantial money and rely on other means of getting competitive information and data. One thing I thought was important to let people know, I had someone actually stop me today and asked me about a document we received regarding financial information, free cash. I think it was 2 weeks ago. And I mentioned to him that, I didn't have it on my person, obviously, but also that all the information in our packets is online. And I think that was one of the things that struck me in this, is that most of this information, all of it should be, but most of it is, in fact, somewhere on the website. And if there's a way that smarter people than me can figure out as to how to make it a little more simple to use. I had an attorney a while back. I forwarded it to Mr. Marchand, looking for the snow removal ordinance, and I couldn't find it, and he couldn't find it. Eventually, and I think Henry contacted the building commissioner to find out what the actual verbiage was, but to be able to find it in the ordinance should not be that difficult, presumably if it's online. So just a number of areas. There's been so many advancements in technology, in the way we can use technology and leverage ourselves to be able to get it and apply it. And included in that would be what's our cost and how can we use it for marketing purposes and so on. And there's a number of different things. And the mayor and I had talked about it at length, but it's been a while, and I think everybody wants to go home and celebrate Valentine's Day. I can see Vesna down there. So, thank you.
Councilor Elliott.
Yeah, I support the motion because I filed a similar motion several months ago. Question I had was, the city maintains a Lowell.gov website, right, Mr. Manager?
That's correct.
And I think sometimes it came to my attention that there's another Lowell.org, which is a whole separate website. The city pays to have that maintained, correct, out of its marketing fund?
We initially we did. We're doing more of that in-house now.
You are,
Yes.
okay. And so I support the motion, and I don't know how it can be done, but I do agree with the motion that, the website needs to be updated because it does change, and as you look at others, and they're,
Correct.
there's a lot of graphics, and as well as adding material. But is there any way to integrate those two? I know there's a lot of information on Lowell.org, but when you do a search, an engine search, a couple of websites come up, which is not the worst thing in the world, but how can we direct people to, for instance, the Winterfest, that was on Lowell.org and not, and maybe there was a link, but I'm not sure, but in any event, I think it makes some sense if we can do that.
The reason, I agree completely, Council, that we want them to mesh better. And we're one of the areas that we're working on right now is something that we've talked about for some time. We're finally able to get on it. Is improving the calendar function, so that if you look at some of these some parts of the website, you find multiple calendars depending upon what you're looking for, but you don't have a single calendar. You can put a filter in and say, I want to know the cultural events, I want to know the government events. So we're working on that right now, and we need to mesh those two a little bit better. That's always been our goal. The Lowell.org is designed primarily for people that aren't in Lowell, the outside world that doesn't necessarily need to know when the waste pickup is or what the ordinances are. You can cross over, but it's designed more for the people that want to come and visit the city, want to come locate a business here, or want to move to the city. And so that was the sort of the intent of that. That's why it has all that information about, it has businesses located on that site that really aren't appropriate to have on a governmental site. But we want to improve that crossover. I think you're correct in that.
Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Excuse me, Councilor Mercier.
Not on that motion,
Okay.
but since I'd like to just suspend the rules and just briefly talk about two very important things.
Motion to suspend the rules by Councilor Mendoza, seconded by Councilor Noon. Councilor Mercier.
Thank you. Last week, on either February 9th or 10th, the city manager, along with some of us councilors, attended a magnificent production of Fiddler on the Roof Jr. at the J.G. Pine School, Arts Magnet School. The cast comprised of 54 students under the direction of Mr. Rose and music director Miss Coward, who was excellent. There was an excellent talent, and that is prevalent in all of our schools. I just wanted to brag a little bit about them because they were a fine example of perfection that you could ever see. We truly enjoyed it. So I wanted to show our appreciation to not only to the teachers, but to the students as well. And next week is school vacation. Now, on Tuesday, February 21st, at the Senior Center down here, 276 Broadway Street, there'll be a grandparents' bingo with the grandchildren from 1 to 3:30 p.m. There will be free pizza, milk, and chips. It's an effort to combine our seniors. I know that previously Councilor Frankie Dakota had such a concern to bridge that gap between the youth and the seniors, so that's happening next week. Now, these efforts started a few years ago by Officer Paul Corcoran and a neighbor of mine, Lenny Gendron, and he's a member of the Friends of the Council on Aging. This is supported by our council group to support that financially. So it's not coming from the city, it's coming from a private fund. And then on Thursday, February 23rd at 1 o'clock, the Senior Center will sponsor a movie for any interested child. It doesn't have to be accompanied by a grandparent. And they may want to see the movie Shrek 3. This will be from 1 to 3. There'll be free pizza again, free snacks, and everybody wins a prize. So this is a very good vacation week. So the city is helping to put some entertainment to the children. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor. And
Manager,
just,
I think you better fix that calendar function soon on the website.
just as a reminder, we do have the special meeting on Thursday to discuss some of the issues downtown at 6:30 here in the council chambers. With that, I'll entertain a motion by Councilor Laurie, second by Councilor Broderick, to adjourn. We stand adjourned.